everyone, and welcome back to my podcast where I interview professors. Today, I am here with...
Professor Ruth Murray-Clay.
Yeah. So before we get started, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Ruth Murray-Clay. I'm a professor of astronomy and astrophysics, and I'm a theorist. I work on how planetary systems form and evolve.
Ooh, that's really interesting. Yeah. So let's just get into it. Why did you choose this pathway?
Oh, well, when I was in high school, I was really excited about math and science, but I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I was thinking about computer science, about math, about physics, and I went to college and started taking some of those classes and realized that I could do physics and also study astronomy, which was something that I had been really excited about for a long time, but had never really occurred to me as a possible career. So I called my parents and I said, hey, I think I'm going to major in astrophysics. I know it's totally coming out of the blue, and my mother laughed at me and sent me a photo of my room with planets all over the wall.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of myself a little bit. During, I think it was middle school and high school for me, I was just interested in math, science, and I was like, what can I do with that going into college? I was like, you know what? I also like space because I have a telescope at home and I like take tons of pictures of the moon. That's my whole thing. I take pictures of the moon. And I was like, you know what? Santa Cruz has a great astrophysics program, so we're going to go into that.
Yeah, well, my not so secret is that Star Trek: The Next Generation made me really excited about space.
Yeah, my dad really loves Star Trek too. I've seen everything in Star Trek. Coming into astrophysics, if I can recall, you're a theorist and you do more on the computational side.
I do computational things, but I do a lot of analytic theory, which means just sort of writing down equations and doing order of magnitude estimates on the board. I can see, your listeners can't see, but you can see my board is covered with equations, and and they're always changing. But then you always have to do a computational component of theory, even if you're as analytic as you get. So I do that as well.
Yeah, because there's these other forms of astrophysics. There's observational, there's high energy. Can you tell us a little bit about those different pathways?
Yeah, so if you're a theorist like me, there are actually two sort of flavors of theory. You can be someone like me who does, calculations and then some computation. You can be a theorist who builds big computer models. And in both cases, you basically are following all of the observations that people are taking with big telescopes or, up in space or state-of-the-art facilities on the ground, and trying to find all of the mysterious things they're seeing that are not yet explained and come up with theories to explain them. And some of those things, you're just trying to get the general idea of what's going on because we have no idea. And I love that part. That's why I do sort of the analytic kind of theory. And other things are just really complicated behavior that puts a lot of physics together. And then you really have to make big simulations, since there are people on campus here who do that kind of work as well. And then observers are the ones who use those telescopes to gather data. They still spend a lot of their time analyzing the data at the computer, but they're directly interacting with the photons observed from the sky, or sometimes gravitational waves. And then there are instrumentation people who build the instruments that take the data on the telescopes. And we have a lot of people like that here as well. So those are really the three main areas: observation, instrumentation, and theory.
Ooh, yeah. I've gotten a lot into Python. I really enjoy Python a lot. I feel like that's probably one of the pathways I want to go into. Theory-wise, though, how does theory really work together with observations?
Yeah, so theory works together with observations usually because the theorists will predict something about objects that people are going to go look at. Then the observers will use the theorists' predictions to write a telescope proposal that says we really want to go look at this galaxy or this planet or something to try to learn whether the theoretical predictions are right. And then the data will come back and they won't match the theory, and the observers will get very happy that they have disproved the theory, and they'll tell the theorists, and theorists have to update the models. Occasionally the theory does work. but usually it goes that way.
Yeah, that
and it's a nice cycle.
Yeah, that brings me into actually one of my questions is, how do theorists and observers work together? And if there's like tension, how do you guys navigate that?
Oh, well, but the tension is the fun kind of tension because when the observers find something new, then the theorists are like, oh, something new to try to figure out. And when the theorists predict something new, the observers say, oh, now we can go, get some telescope time to see if this is right or not. And usually, in the broad strokes, they do agree. Mm-hmm. But then there's always another detail that we don't understand yet. And everybody's happy about that because that's the progress of science. So we collaborate together. I mean, obviously, people sometimes don't get along, but it's not. That's just people, in the broad sense, we collaborate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for collaboration, if you guys do find something that does add up to the theory, you guys go on to writing papers about that, right?
Yeah. So I often write papers with observers who are collaborators. Sometimes we'll just write a straight up theory paper or a straight up observation paper, but oftentimes there are people of both kinds who are co-authors on papers.
Yeah, I know, because in my research group, because I'm taking actually your class right now, we're doing globular clusters. And if I remember correctly, our professor actually wants to fully publish our paper. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be really fun because it's the whole thing of having to write a paper together as a group. Mm-hmm. I feel like opinions will kind of clash. Mm-hmm. How would you go about that if you're like writing a paper and you two have like two different ways you want to go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Usually writing a scientific paper takes a lot of iteration because you have to make sure, like you said, that everybody's happy with how it's going to go at the end. And that can be a difficult thing. So usually the way people manage that is somebody or, one or two people will take the lead on each particular paper that's being written by a collaboration. And they're kind of in charge of organizing it and organizing everybody's contributions and then and managing how to deal with it if there are disagreements. But it is really a consensus kind of activity. Everybody has to be happy with it in the end because everybody is an author and taking responsibility for that paper. And if you have a group of people who really just don't work well together, then you'll be like, that was lovely. We won't write another paper together again.
Regarding, because you are a teacher here at UC Santa Cruz, would you rather do research or teach?
Oh, but I do both.
True. That is, I mean, best of both worlds.
That's what's great about my job. Yeah.
And then another question I would have, what does your day-to-day work life juggling research and teaching?
It is a lot. There are a lot of different things that you do as a faculty member at a research university. So you have to, manage all of your teaching, prepare for your classes, and do all of that work while maintaining, the research progress. A lot of research is done with graduate students and also sometimes undergraduates. So there's a lot of the research. A lot of the research happens in collaboration with other people, and there's a lot of meetings to try to move the work forward. And then when I'm lucky, I get a little bit of time to sit down at the computer and do my own calculations. There's also a lot of service work that you have to do. It is really a balance of juggling many things. But the nice thing is that as you go along in your career on the way to becoming a faculty member, you sort of add in all of those things little by little. So by the time you're in that position, it's not like you've been asked to start doing all sorts of different things all at once.
Yeah. Do you do research here on campus, actually?
I do. Yeah. I do a lot of research with graduate students and also by myself. But I am a theorist, so most of my work I can do on the computer or on a big computer cluster from my office. I get a lot of ideas by going and talking to observers, either here or at conferences. And so I have collaborators who are particularly observers, but also some other theorists who I meet regularly with on Zoom as well.
Oh, yeah. Do you, because I talked with Professor Wolfgang on Life as a Particle Physicist. He says he travels a lot. Do you actually travel a lot?
Not as frequently as people who have to go to telescopes or go to research, facilities, but I still do travel a lot to conferences and to give colloquia and to, just to collaborate with other people. It's really important for sharing ideas and inspiration, because science is a creative activity.
How does a conference actually look like?
Conferences, so they can be bigger or smaller, but generally you go and people give talks. So they'll give, a PowerPoint or, keynote talk, and explaining the work that they've been doing. There'll be time for questions. There are usually people there with posters as well at a poster session. You can go around and take a look at what people are doing and talk to them. There's some breaks where you can chat with other people, and really the goal is to get caught up on what other people are most excited about right now, what they've been finding recently, and talk with people about new ideas, and that really pushes things forward.
Are these conferences like open fully to the public?
You have to register for them. So usually it's mostly professional scientists who are there, but there's no like a restriction. You just have to register.
Oh, okay. I would love to go to one actually.
You should, yeah. There are undergraduate-focused conferences as well that are good places to start. But also, depending on your work, you can ask your advisors about what conferences might be appropriate to go to talk about your science.
And in the topic of research, for undergraduates, I've heard it's a lot of undergraduates don't actually know how to get into research. Do you have anything like any insight on that, on how they could more or less like get in contact with a professor and see about joining a research group?
Yeah, so my biggest advice is to be persistent. So to write a little bit about yourself, what experience you have, what you're looking for in a research project. Send emails to a bunch of professors asking if they might have either a position in their group or if they know of anyone who might be looking for an undergraduate researcher. And then I would, if they don't get back to you, I would go sort of knock on their door and say, hey, is there a time I could set up a meeting with you to talk about this? And any individual person might not get back to you, but if you're persistent, you will find someone.
Yeah. Because I'm also trying to get into, we're going to try to. We're hoping, because there is actually just a research social from Scoop. Scoop is a Santa Cruz outreach organization for physics. And they've been really helpful for me in trying to learn about research, because they also have stuff like No Jargon Talks where people talk about the research. And do you know of any other organizations besides Scoop actually?
SPS, the Society of Physics Students. I love Scoop events. I think that they're really fantastic, and it's wonderful to hear that they've been useful for you. Those are the main ones that I know about on campus. And
the move on from those, I want to actually know about your role in astrophysics. So you're a theorist. Have you actually been a part of any like upcoming things or really new and like hugely important things?
So I've made models of a number of things that I think are really interesting. In terms of collaborations with big sort of observing projects, so I've been part of big collaborations that include both theorists and observers. One of the ones that is going on right now is there's a group of people who are taking a lot of data of what's called the hydrogen Lyman alpha absorption spectrum of gas escaping from planets that are close to their stars. And it's one of the biggest surveys that's been done with the Hubble Space Telescope, and it is in the ultraviolet, which is why you have to do it from space. And one of the goals of that survey is to test whether some of the models that I and my collaborators have worked on are correct for describing this escape, which is really important because we think that for small planets, where it's hard to observe that escaping atmosphere directly, like this escape process has completely shaped what kind of atmosphere they have. So testing whether our models that we're assuming are right are actually right is really, really important.
Yeah. Has there actually ever been any times where a theory, so let's say someone had a theory and it came out to be true, but someone else made another theory that kind of contrasts that? Has there ever been any times where that's been like proven?
I mean, definitely yes. Let me see if I can think of an example. I mean, one of the things to remember as a scientist is that if you come up with something really interesting, people will try to break it. Oh. And that might seem like, oh, why are you being aggressive and trying to break my result? But what it actually means is that they find your result really interesting. And so they're trying to see, like, is there any way to get around this? Like, does this have to be right? And so, yeah, frequently there are ideas that happen, and then people will come and say, oh, well, we could do the same thing this other way. And I am not coming up with a fantastic example off the top of my head, but I will say that for this atmospheric escape stuff that I was telling you about, people are still arguing for the small planets about whether the escape is primarily driven by like high energy photoionizing photons that are like driving the outflow, or whether it's actually that the planets are just being normally heated to a pretty hot temperature by their star, but they're like pretty puffy from their because they had a lot of internal heat on the inside, and so they're puffy enough that just the regular energy from the star is enough to cause escape. And that first model is the one I've worked most on and has been around for longer. But the second model sort of snuck in there and could be important in certain parameter space, and it's sort of a story like what you were talking about.
When you're doing these models, I never seen a supercomputer before. Do you have to actually go through supercomputers in order to make these models?
When you make models, it's actually really important to have a whole array, like a ladder of models. You want to have really simple ones that you can compute really quickly. And that's critical for being creative, because you want to figure out what's important here, and you want to find out fast and not spend all your time doing detailed models of things that aren't important. Then you need sort of intermediate models that do a little better. And then once you feel confident in those, then you need the giant computer models to do even better. So I do all three kinds of models. Some of them run on supercomputers. Some of them run on my laptop. Some of them I just write on the board.
Oh, there's so many equations on this board. I don't understand any of those, but they look really interesting.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, but for these models, can you explain what a supercomputer is?
Yeah, a supercomputer is basically just a bunch of CPUs from like the inside of your computer, just all stuck together. And what's special about them is that they can all communicate with each other. So like inside your computer, you might have one processing chip. Actually, you probably have more now. Maybe you have 8 or 10 or something in modern computers. But let's just say one, right? And it used to be that way. And on your supercomputer, you'll have a collection, maybe of 40 of them, in what's called a node. And then you'll have a bunch of nodes. And those chips can all communicate with each other. So say you have 40 different tasks that you want to run. Instead of running the first one and the second one and the third one, you can run 40 of them all at once on that node. And more than that, say you want to make a big simulation where like the density of gas in one cell that you're computing cares about the density of gas in the neighboring cell, and you want to update their densities over time. Right? You can say all 40 of my those cores, they should update the gas in one of those cells. I'm oversimplifying, but and then they have to tell the neighbors what they'd found, and then you do it again. You don't just do one cell of gas. Each one will do a bunch of them at a time. But that's what the supercomputer does, is it just speeds things up by doing a lot of computations in parallel at once.
And you gotta code all of that?
Yeah, but you can basically code, you code what you want it to do sort of normally, and then you tell it how to communicate with the neighbors. And there are packages that will help you do that distribution across the nodes. So it's not as bad as it sounds. Of course, recently people have been doing a lot more with GPUs. I have less experience with that, and that's a little bit different, but similar in concept.
Yeah, I feel like when you're looking on like the news or some website, you see these publishes, and it's like, oh, they simplified it a lot, but the amount of time it probably took to get to that point was probably a really long time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you disregard all the work and you're just reading it like, oh, I understand this, but those people who were working on it didn't understand it at first. And it kind of, the more you think about it, it kind of blows your mind a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really critical point. I mean, the whole point of doing science is you're doing something nobody understands yet.
Yeah.
So in the end, once you're done, you understand it, and you might explain it to somebody as if it's all very straightforward. But you have to remember that the whole reason it's new is because the person working on it was struggling to figure out what was going on. Yeah.
And while you're getting into this field, what actually kind of mindset did you have coming into this, knowing that, this is going to be a lot of dedication I have to put into it?
I came into it trying to find something that I was going to have fun doing and was going to be interesting, which sounds trite, but it's actually really important.
Yeah.
You know, I love having a job that I find really interesting. I don't enjoy every little bit of my job, to be clear. It is a job.
Yeah.
It's work. But I am really excited about the things that I'm trying to figure out, and that makes me motivated. I think a key thing for thinking about if you're considering becoming an academic scientist as opposed to a scientist working in industry is academic scientists, nobody's really telling you what the goals are or what to do. You have to bring that yourself. So you have to be like intrinsically motivated by the projects that you're working on. But as an undergrad, you don't need to know that yet.
Yeah. How do you guys actually like decide on which problem you want to work on?
That's the hardest part. That's why you have to spend 6 years in graduate school, because you have to learn how to do that, right? You have to learn what everybody's thinking in the field. You know, you go to those conferences, try to understand what people are finding interesting in the new observations, sort of build yourself a mental model of what is currently understood in your area and what is not understood in your area, and then think about what problems could you work on that will bring that whole understanding forward. And it's not easy, which is why it takes graduate school to get to the point where you're truly independent.
Yeah, that sounds it sounds like a lot of work, but if you really like this field, it's worth it though.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to think about with grad school, at least in astrophysics, is that the first couple years are kind of like undergrad, that you have classes, but after that you're really you're more like a working scientist who's like an apprentice.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like you're in the same kind of school as undergrad for all of that time. And another thing to think about is that, when people look for PhDs in industry, the reason that people might hire someone with a PhD is because they're looking for someone who knows how to identify what is an interesting problem and just go do something useful about it without being told. And if that sounds hard to do, it's because it is. And so that's kind of what you're learning to do in graduate school.
Yeah, for undergrads, is there any advice like in terms of like what skills they'll need most coming into this field?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that is really critical is developing in yourself the practice of trying to figure out what is the next thing you're going to trying it, have it not work, get the feedback from someone with more experience about what is the actual next thing. Okay, do that. Then try to come up yourself with the next thing to try again. And that it both goes for steps in research projects, but it also goes for things that, skills that you need to develop. Like, so in astrophysics, you do need to be able to code. You don't need to be like the best coder ever, but you need to be able to do that. That's still going to be true with AI because you're going to need to be able to evaluate what AI is doing. You're going to, you need to know physics. And if you need to not just learn some physics, you need to learn how to learn the physics you need when you get to it, right? So maybe you learned it once and like later you're like, oh, right, I need that now. So you need to be able to go back and relearn it, right?
Because it's like if you're like gone doing something else for a certain amount of time, you're going to forget that information from before.
Yeah, but if you remember that you did know it, and you remember how to go re-find it again and learn it, then you're okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Is there actually anything you wish you knew before coming into this career?
Anything I wish I knew. I mean, like everybody, I've made my mistakes and taken twists and turns along the way. Had challenges, had bad times, overcome all of them. Still have things that stress me out. I don't know. I think that I think the main thing is to know to go ask people what it is you're not thinking of that you should know, right? And that's the hardest part because is the unknown unknowns, the classic problem. And here's the thing that I think I've learned over the years. You should get everyone's advice, but not take everyone's advice.
Yeah.
You should take it seriously, figure out why they're giving you the advice. Don't get mad about it. If you disagree with it, just don't do it.
That's actually really good. I actually never thought about that. Because I feel like that's also kind of one of the reasons why I do all of this. Is because I get to learn from all these professors I'm interviewing, especially since right now I'm in a series of this is my field. So it's like I get to learn all this information from other professors. I might not get majority of it at first, but later on I'd be like, oh, I remember this professor talking about this. I know what this means. So it's kind of like getting information from talking to other professors and getting that information is really helpful in the long term. And I really enjoyed why I started this whole personal project of mine. But also going on to Santa Cruz and in general, is there any classes that people coming to this field should expect to take?
Yeah, so the physics classes are important, of course. I think one of the ones that that I think most people in Santa Cruz seem to get early on, but sometimes people at other institutions who come here for graduate school haven't, is statistical mechanics and thermodynamics. That stuff is actually really important for astrophysics. So by the time you graduate, if you want to stay in astrophysics, you should have learned some of that stuff. Having a breadth of understanding of different physical processes will serve you well, because astrophysics combines all sorts of different kinds of physics.
Because it does get into the theoretical sense of it. When it comes to theory, how should someone go about, how would I word it? Let's say someone has this crazy theory that's not yet proven, but also we don't know how to go about that theory. How should someone go about that, if that is understandable?
So what I like to do is try to understand the fundamentals of people's theories in an order of magnitude way. And that means, can I get it kind of right within a factor of 10, just standing at the board with really rough calculations. And actually, most professional astronomers do that, even if they're not theorists. It might not be the first thing that they talk about, but they do it. Like if they're observers, they'll like do some estimates for, is this actually observable? Is this something that I think I could actually see? Astronomers are really good at figuring out like what are the tall poles, like what are the most important things. And so if you hear somebody talking about a crazy theory and you have sort of some fundamental physics background, some things it won't work, but most of the time you can ask them, can you give me like, is there like an order of magnitude way to understand this, like just really roughly? And I find that to be a really good way to build intuition.
Yeah, and going on the general topic of astrophysics, going back like further back, how has astrophysics changed from like back then to now?
From like when I started in the field, working on extrasolar planets, which is what I do, was a pretty small fraction of astrophysics, and it was actually kind of looked down on because people were like, oh, it's too close to Earth and planetary science, and that's geology or something. I don't know. Geology is awesome, so but physicists are like that sometimes. But now it's like a third of the field. So now a lot of astrophysics is about planets. So it does feel very different from when I started. I started in it because I thought it was really interesting and I liked my advisor's approach to problems. But I kind of lucked out that it's become a really big thing. And why that's lucky is because there's lots of new data all the time. And when there's lots of new data, there's lots of new problems you can think about.
Yeah, I mean, all these other unsolvable things, it's like there's always a new problem every day that you can always just get into, even if it's small. Has there ever been a time where you're like, oh, this problem looks pretty interesting, and just quickly did like a calculation on like a board, like, oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Usually you do like 3 calculations that are like, no. And then the 4th or 5th one, maybe if you're lucky, will be like, yeah.
I have to ask this. Has there ever been a time where you're watching a movie and you're like, I just gotta double check this really quickly?
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm not going to be able to come up with a great example super fast, but yes.
It's like it could be from the Interstellar movie, or just like, I remember Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about Thor's hammer, and
yeah. Okay, I'm blanking on it for you. I'm sorry, but I have definitely been there.
Yeah, there's also been sometimes where, like, I kind of wonder how they just got to that.
Sometimes you just have to decide that that part makes no sense, and that's fine.
Yeah, because there's all these sci-fi movies, and majority of the time they're wrong, but it what makes a movie interesting. So yeah.
I will tell you that I did co-author with a graduate student and just on the archive, not an actual publication, but there's this thing called the archive where you post your publications, and in what's called preprint form. It means that it's not the version that the journal put together, but it's free and open access to everybody. And we wrote an April Fool's paper about the interactions between the starship Voyager and the ring system that it would fly over in the introduction to the Star Trek Voyager. So you can check out, I did some actual n-body integrations to see like the amount of like disturbing that the Voyager would do to the rings due to its gravitational interaction.
I gotta look at that. That sounds really interesting. I gotta look at that paper.
So that's the most that I have done along those lines.
And then majority of my questions actually, there's one question someone wanted me to ask you that I found really interesting. It is, what's your take on the theory that we're in a black hole?
Yeah, so general relativity and black holes is not my direct area of expertise. However, they are fantastically awesome, and I'm a little skeptical because I think we would be I think we'd be pretty certainly destroyed on the way in. So we'd have to be in there for the whole time. But I don't know. we don't actually know what's going on inside black holes, and we don't actually understand the topology of space-time in general. So there are a lot of things beyond what we have observational data about, and there's a lot of room to speculate when we don't have observational data. So to be a little serious, I tend to gravitate toward problems where you can make the observation, because then you don't, as a theorist, you don't have so much room to just spend all of your time in unconstrained speculation land, which is super fun, but I actually think it ends up being more fun when you have that iterative process. That's why I'm not a string theorist.
Yeah. Oh yeah, string theory. I don't want to get into that. No. That's something I think I know for sure I really don't want to get into. String theory can be put aside for now. But actually, I thought of a question I wanted to ask you just now. It's about, so all these equations, how does one come up with these equations?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And again, I'm going to say, you practice doing order of magnitude. It's a creativity practice. You don't have to solve all the complicated equations. You can just really quickly estimate things on the board. You know all the physics that you know. You try to think of what could be important. You show which things aren't important. Then once you figured out what's important, then you're like, oh, okay, somebody has probably worked on, the detailed equations for this physics, or maybe I've worked on it, or, and then you can go back and try to do it in great detail. But at least for me, I don't start with like, here's some big complicated equation. I start with, what's the physical process that should be the most important? And can I estimate it and show that that process actually is important? And then go to the complicated version.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that would be something I gotta think about too. Because I think it's the whole, you really have to know physics and all that to even start these problems. And sometimes it really can get confusing. You can do the math on your own, and then it could be wrong as you look at someone else's paper. And it's kind of like, you gotta know you're going to make these mistakes. You're really gonna.
The other nice thing about estimation is it gives you a great way of checking your mistakes. Because when you're doing new science, there's no answer in the back of the book. So how do you check it?
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of estimation.
Well, that's actually all my questions. So before we end off here, what advice would you give a student interested in astrophysics?
I would give you the advice to try to take a broad range of classes, get involved in research. If you don't like the first research project that you're involved in, find another one. Just be involved. Go to scoop events. Be involved in what's going on campus. Try to get to know people and really feel part of the department and the research activity that's going on campus. There are also, professional talks that happen on campus, but I'd start with the scoop ones. But you're welcome at the department colloquium. My advice would be to, try to get to know people and feel like you're part of the department and its research activities.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for having the time to meet with me today. And yeah, that ends today's podcast. Thanks again for Ruth to be here. And I'll see you guys next time as we do one podcast once a month.